Hey everybody, Mr. Eric Jenkins coming at you with a brand new video. Today we are going to be talking about B movies, mainly horror movies. You guys showed a lot of support on my Instagram because I was not able to do a Mail Monday video. I put up an Instagram post for 24 hours letting you guys vote on what video I did. Weird Video Games won. However, there were a few people that did vote a little bit after, and you know what? I did want to make this for a while, so might as well give it to you guys. If you do like this type of content, please consider subscribing, as I might do another one of these in the future, going over some of the B movies that I have in my collection, going over different formats and stuff like that. Hopefully able to do some more retrospectives of movies, TV, and video games, as well as my normal card unboxings. If you like this video, please leave a like, and like I said, subscribe for future content. So, let's get into it right off the bat. Well, technically it's a B film. I'm also going to put down this bottom half right here, a better close-up of the actual DVD, VHS, Blu-ray, etc., etc., just so you guys can take a look at it and look at it for yourself a little bit better. We have a copy of Army of Darkness. This is the Anchor Bay release. Now, unlike the traditional kind of, Bruce Campbell on the Hill, we have a little bit different artwork here. I've always liked this artwork for some reason. I don't know why. I mean, the iconic one is great, but this, the fact that this one exists is pretty cool. For those of you who do not know, Army of Darkness is the third installment of the Evil Dead series. Evil Dead being very gruesome, graphic, very in your tense. Evil Dead 2 gets a little, more comedy. Army of Darkness is just super iconic. This is the Anchor Bay release, and it is still factory sealed, which is pretty rad. One cool thing about my collection, some people think it's cool, some people don't think it's cool. A lot of my items are still either sealed or still have the original price stickers on them. The original price stickers thing, I've always enjoyed the origin of where an item has come from. So if I get a Nintendo 64 game or a Super Nintendo game and it has a old EB price sticker on it, I usually keep it on there. Or KB Toys, if it's a defunct company, even better. Factory sealed, a lot of people do have some issues with. For me, I have a copy of Army of Darkness already. This one is a little bit more rare, so I keep that one factory sealed. And kind of just a little backstory, I know I should have done this prior to me going into Army of Darkness, but I started collecting media maybe when I was around 12 or 13 years old. I think 14 is when I started to actually start doing it, but 12 and 13, I, had a little bit of allowance money, parents drop you off at the mall with your friends for 2 hours. You're able to go to Sam Goody, R.I.P., Suncoast Video, R.I.P., and then FYE was, R.I.P., most FYEs. And then a couple other stores hit the scenes in our local malls. Newberry Comics being one of them, so you'll see some price stickers from Newberry Comics in there as well. Shouts out to everyone that worked at Newberry Comics when I knew them and that still work there when I go there. You guys rule. Give me good recommendations on stuff, a lot of it being some of this stuff here. But I started collecting DVDs mainly on and off for a few years. I would spend a lot of my money on that stuff and CDs, which looking back was kind of strange, but it's whatever. It wasn't until I was in my early 20s when I moved and didn't have internet for about a year, and DVDs and Blu-rays were a thing. I'd go and I had to cancel my Netflix subscription, my Hulu subscription. I didn't have Hulu back then, but my Netflix subscription, and that $7 I'd buy it. I'd save up for a season of Fresh Prince, and that would be my entertainment for the next couple weeks. Or I'd go to the library and go and look at stuff. But I was collecting heavily at that point in time, to the point where we are now, where I don't go out as much to look for this stuff, but sometimes it kind of just falls in my lap. I do work at a pawn shop, so I do see a lot of media come in, so I'm not hunting as much. It just kind of just falls in my lap. And a lot of these movies that are still factory sealed, a gentleman came into the shop before I worked there and sold I guess it was his great uncle or his uncle's like entire collection because he passed away, and a lot of it was like obscure, exploitation films. So like, a week before I started working there, I missed out on the Ilsa box set, which I'm kind of upset about because that's like a $80 box set, and it's kind of difficult to find those, a good version of that movie, even though it's not a good movie. But me being a weirdo that I am, I'd like to watch it. And then, so like Army of Darkness, for example, came from my work. Still has the price sticker on it. But without further ado, let's keep going into the movies. Here is one that I got when I was in high school. This was one of like my top 10 favorite horror films during my high school era. And I got into like exploitation horror films around like my 15, 16-year-old era. Like that rebellious, like I was listening to Cannibal Corpse and, like deathcore and like, oh, like what's the heaviest band t-shirt you got? Hot Topic. And so I started looking at like just like crazy movies and stuff like that. But then I was like, well, let me look at what, was the precursor to this. And one of those was the movie Freaks. Todd Browning's Freaks is a 1932 film done by Todd Browning, who did Dracula in 1931. This film pretty much killed his career, if I remember correctly, because of how grotesque the film was during this time era. Basically, if you might know a little bit about this movie, if you listen to the Ramones at all and you heard the song Pinhead, Gabba Gabba He, Gabba's one of us. I don't want to be a pinhead no more. That's from this film. Gobble gobble, we accept her. Gobble gobble. Also, The Simpsons ripped it off with the jockeys. I think it was the jockeys when Homer learns when Bart gets his horse and they. Yeah, I think that was an episode. Anyway, very, very interesting movie. It's about one of the little people gets befriended by an attractive trapeze artist who's going to basically kill him or get his money, and she gets found out by the other freaks in the circus act. And she becomes like it's it's a bold movie. There's an ending scene where she gets her comeuppance, if you will. But there were some like very like out there scenes that frightened audiences. There's a gentleman that he's only a torso, and he's like lighting a cigarette and he's crawling through the mud with just a knife in his mouth. There's the pinheads, which seemed very new to people. And we didn't get the Mondo series of films that we got in the 60s and 70s that kind of, enlightened the viewers on what other types of cultures and people there are there. So, like, an American in the 30s going to the cinema to see this movie, who the director was a universal monster genius. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe that we're watching this. But it pretty much, like, he pretty much was, like, not blacklisted, but nobody really wanted to work with him. But I love this movie. I think it's actually very, very interesting, especially for not just for the time, but if you look at what else this has spawned. I mean, the American Horror Story pretty much did a season on the circus life, which a lot of it has to do with this film. One of my favorites, I think I started watching that when I was like 16, which I took a film course during that time too, so I was also getting recommendations from my film professor. Shout outs Mr. B if you're watching. Huge influence on what films I watched because we had somewhat similar tastes, but he kind of like pushed me into the right direction. Going on to that era of my life, we've got pretty much everyone's kind of. This would be if a movie was an edgy sort of meme lord, this would be the movie. Cannibal Holocaust. Purchased this in 2009, which I don't think that's right. Yeah, 2009. Yeah. Grindhouse releasing of Cannibal Holocaust on DVD. For those who don't know, this is known as like the granddaddy of all cannibal films. It's notorious for having animal torture scenes, and it's very disturbing. It is a disturbing film. There are other films out there that are more disturbing, but this is kind of the movie that a lot of people go to for how disturbing it is, with its real life looking depictions of rape, murder, pillaging, dissection of animals. It's not like Faces of Death, where it's like, here's someone eating a monkey's brain and then it cuts to like a shootout. It's a very interesting film. Basic synopsis is a group goes into the Amazon to film kind of a discovery documentary on these Amazonian tribes. And they're nowhere to be found. A group goes out to find them, and they find spools of film. They bring the spools of film back to New York, and we are then watching the spools of film with the people that find them. So a lot of people thought this was real. And it is noted as one of the first big found footage movies. And a lot of people look at like Blair Witch as like the big, like, oh man, like Blair Witch had this huge presence. If this came out like during the internet era, it would have like gotten a lot more hype than it did. Just like Blair Witch. Blair Witch had like websites made to like debunk the Blair Witch, phenomenon, stuff like that. But here is like the interesting part of this film. The director forced every actor that was killed in the film to pretty much lay low in apartments, so he paid their rent and like would get food for them, and they were not allowed to work during that time to make it look like these actors were deceased. And the director actually ended up having to go to court for murder for creating a snuff film. So he had to prove in court that these people were still alive. And then there's a scene that's very famous, or infamous, I should say, of a Amazonian girl who is impaled with a stake going through her bottom, going all the way through her top. And the camera crew is pretty much just filming it. And they had to prove that she was alive. And it just so happens that she was a sword swallower. So she came into court and they showed the prop. It had a little unicycle bicycle seat on it. She kind of propped herself up and then did her sword swallowing act and proved that that was happening. And then he also had to pretty much disprove the animal torture, which it is gruesome to watch, especially if you're not expecting it. There is an animal-friendly version of this film. If you are interested in watching it, I would recommend watching that first. Basically, it's just the crew just hacking at animals. However, not defending them, I'm just going to just give out information. They utilized the animal right after that the shot was done, and like the tribes would then cook for the crew. Like I said, I'm not entertaining it at all, but those are just the evidence that was shown. So he did get some flack for it. Movie is known for being banned in like 50 countries, but you can readily find it on Amazon and stuff like that. No pun intended. Or some like different bookstores kind of have it and stuff like that. But this was like the film that got me into the grindhouse exploitation films. After that, I would go into like I Spit on Your Grave, I Drink Your Blood, a lot of grindhouse release stuff. And then I sort of started to branch out between like some older stuff, newer stuff. But this was like the big film that kind of got me into like enjoying very obscure cinema. Next up is a VHS. Who knows what that is? We have probably the coolest VHS that I own, most gruesome VHS that I own, and the weirdest VHS tape that I own, next to Chopping Mall. I own a copy of Chopping Mall on VHS. We have 3 on a Meathook. Eric, what the hell is 3 on a Meathook? I'm glad you asked. Basically, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, aka it's basically a more accurate version of the depictions of Ed Gein than Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Basically, it is there's a family and there's a gentleman very similar to Norman Bates, because Norman Bates, Buffalo Bill, and Leatherface are all loosely based off of the infamous serial killer Ed Gein. Actually, not serial killer, I should say. No, I'll say killer / grave robber / deviant. Deviant is the more appropriate term, because I believe that he was only charged with 2 murders, if I remember correctly. Don't ask me why. I kind of know that, but anyway, these girls go missing, and they're trying to figure out why. And the trailer for this is the best. Google the trailer for 3 on a Meathook, and you can actually find 3 on a Meathook on YouTube. So I would highly recommend you check it out. The guy that does the VO for it, and Eli Roth actually loves this trailer. He actually there's an interview with him where he just loves it, and it's literally like this weird poetic hush going over everything, and at the end it just goes 3 on a Meathook. And it's the strangest thing, and it's like they open the cabin and there's girls on Meathooks. Very, very gruesome. It's like the definition of like a B slasher crappy movie. Probably played on a bunch of double feature drive-ins. However, the gentleman who made this movie passed away like 3 years afterwards, so never able to continue on with his slasher exploitation films, which is a bummer. But very, very cool VHS. Probably one of the more expensive ones that I own. When I saw someone brought that in at work, and it was just a bunch of just dusty VHS tapes. They're like, I don't want them. There's a bunch of DVDs. We paid them out, and I'm going through them. I'm like, I'm trying to build. This is cool artwork. I never really heard of this movie either. And I'm like, I'm going through it, and I'm like, I made my little pile, and I, gave my boss some money. I'm like, all right, I'm taking these home. And I started looking them up. I'm like, holy crap, this is like a $40, $50 VHS tape. And I start looking it up a little bit more. I'm like, this movie looks freaking awesome. And I think I watched Sleepaway Camp that night, and then I was like, I gotta watch 3 on a Meathook. And 3 on a Meathook sucks. It's not very good at all. It's just such a weird movie, and I do like Psycho. All 3 films that Ed Gein are loosely based off of, I enjoy. Silence of the Lambs is brilliant. We just watched it for one of our Halloween movies. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is an excellent, great way to build people into a very slasher genre, especially with the everything that you see here is real. Kind of introduction. Psycho is Psycho. It's it's alright. Psycho is alright. It's not known for being a good film or anything like that. But this movie sucks, and that's what's kind of funny about it. Is you got all these movies that are based off of them, and then you get 3 on a Meathook. I'm gonna leave the link in the description down below for that movie, or maybe I'll clip it. I'll clip it right here. 3 on a Meathook. It's just crazy. Anyway, on to the last film that I chose. But as I was going through my VHS collection, I realized that there's a film. The film that I chose is a film I actually did a review on my Instagram. It's called Don't Look in the Basement, aka also known as the Forgetting. Cut it right there. Also known as The Forgotten. Very, very interesting film, but when I was doing some research on it, something was very odd about the tagline for this film. And it was reminiscent of a film that was shot by Wes Craven, and the tagline is, "To avoid fainting, repeat, this is only a movie. This is only a movie. This is only a movie." Last House on the Left. Came out around the same time. This is more notable or more famous of a film, even though it's still like a low-key like horror film. This movie has a old lady in it that gets her tongue chopped off. So not as cool as Last House on the Left. This movie's also not very good, but it's a good fun, like, it's a good bad movie, if that makes sense. Premise of this film, there is a nurse that wants to get a job at of course, an insane asylum. Yay! And it doesn't look like a normal insane asylum. There's no such thing as a normal insane asylum. It looks like a farmhouse. Because they can't afford to get a big old Gothic structure with, proper, like, rooms with padded walls, like Cuckoo's Nest type of shit. No, they get a farmhouse that they just cleared everything out of, and then just they had, like, an open floor plan for all of their patients. And each of the patients had, a different issue with them. There was one female who always wanted to sleep with someone because her husband left her, so she felt like she needed to be wanted. There was one gentleman, he was an older gentleman that was like had the mentality of like an 8-year-old. There was a judge, they called him Judge, that would just speak in lawyer-isms and pretend he was the judge and get very angry. And there's a couple other, oddball characters. You got your traditional, like, running around, crazy hair person. And then you got the old lady. The old lady just shows up out of nowhere and is like, hi! Like, it's like creepy bullshit. But it's hilarious. So, a nurse comes in to work this new job, and the head doctor is instructing a patient to chop wood, where he then loses it and then chops him in the back and kills him. So another doctor is covering this up, and she wants to become the head doctor. So now there is a new nurse and the new head doctor, who was the older nurse. And the newer nurse is seeing all these weird things happening, like the old lady's tongue gets chopped off, this person's, bleeding, there's this person's dead. What's happening? And then it's just such a bizarre film, and you could pretty much like piece the twist isn't really there. It's not an M. Night Shyamalan twist, if you will. It's very easy to kind of put together. Not going to spoil it. This movie is also on YouTube as well if you do decide to watch it. I think it's actually a very fun movie to watch. Also has the what price sticker was this from? Video Galaxy in Rockville, Connecticut. Born and raised, boy, used to actually go to this Hollywood Video. I believe now it is a oil place, but used to go to that and rent video games back in the day, and also VHS tapes. Also had one, I think, where D'Angelo's is as well. So, it used to be a video rental store. Anyway, very, very cool film. I just thought it was kind of interesting that they had the same exact tagline. Last House, like, that was, like, the tagline. And they just, like, kind of just, like, we're gonna take that tagline, slap it on this, and maybe people will watch it. But very, very interesting film, and it did get remade, where one of the patients gets admitted to another hospital. Like, it was made in, like, the early 2000s. Early to mid 2000s, and one of the patients, like the actor reprised his role as one of the patients, and he starts hearing things from this film, and I'm like, this is freaking weird, but I gotta check it out. So hopefully I can check that out soon. But thank you for sticking with me and hearing me rant and rave about terrible B movies. Like I said before, if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing, as I will hopefully be doing this in the future, doing just a little, list or maybe I'll do a top 10. Maybe I'll go over my top films of all time. Who knows? Let me know down below what you would like to see me do. As always, be kind to one another. If you like the video, also give it a thumbs up. It does help the growth of the channel. And if you want to see something cool, just leave it down below. Subscribe, like it. I'm not going to say it again. But thank you, and have a phenomenal evening, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.